Bodog Poll Question. We're asking you, who are you cheering for, Blue Jays or Mariners? You can vote at Sekeres and Price on Twitter. Bodog, your choice for free casino games, poker strategy, and sports odds. Bodog line of the day for me, I'm regular season game Friday. That's right. NHL regular season starts Friday from the Czech Republic. Yeah. San Jose Sharks, Nashville Predators. I'm going to take the Preds to beat San Jose. Going to lay a goal and a half here to improve my payout. Pays out at plus 130 on your Bodog line of the day. Here he is, one half of the Rink-Wide Duo with Andrew Wadden. They were back at it. We'll be back at it again tonight. We're at it yesterday as well after cuts. And our Canucks reporter in the Go-Goat Sports Studio, Mr. Jeff Paterson. How you doing?
I'm doing well, guys.
Mm-hmm.
The miles are on here. UBC game day skate for an Abbotsford game. That's a lot for even the professional athletes to spend time on a bus and such.
Yeah, as I recall, the last time they played a preseason game in Abbotsford, they skated in Abbotsford and then spent the day at a team hotel. So I don't know if this is cost cutting because they would have to get them some day beds somewhere.
Yes.
Regardless, there's going to be a lengthy commute to get out to Abbotsford in time for game time, so I'm sure they've got it all figured out. They've got smart people there behind the scenes that take care of these types of things, but a little bit of a different strategy to go UBC at Abbotsford.
And for those that don't know, they all do nap, almost to a man. If there's anybody that doesn't,
they say they nap at the very least.
They do. They love them a nap, and so you're right. There are day beds needed for the players.
Jeff, both teams dressing really representative lineups here tonight. Shorty was not wrong when he said Connor McDavid in Abbotsford. And it is a Truth and Reconciliation themed game a week later. Do you know how all this came about? Because you don't typically see two great rosters and a theme around a preseason game when you're down to the brass tacks of only two more left. And, of course, battles for jobs and things like that. How did this come about?
Well, I saw the Abbotsford Canucks took their cue from the big league team last year and had a lot of these theme nights that have been so well received at the NHL level, so I'm not surprised. And, of course, Truth and Reconciliation Day was last week. Well, Abbotsford, the Canucks in Abbotsford don't play an AHL game for weeks still, so I think they saw this as an opportunity to put their best foot forward in that regard, and so good on them. I think, if I'm not mistaken, they had a similar ceremony there last year when they played a preseason game. This is, by my count, the third time. Last year they had camp there, and then, of course, they had a preseason game. I remember Ottawa, and the Canucks played a preseason game out there a couple of seasons ago as well. So they put on a good show. When I heard Shorty mention McDavid the other night, I had to figure he wouldn't just recklessly throw that out there to get the people in the Fraser Valley excited. He had to have had on some pretty good authority, and so... Yeah, what an opportunity, because the Canucks, you can make a case that this is pretty darn close to their opening night lineup. They're in Edmonton next week to face the Oilers on October the 12th, and Spencer Martin's getting the starting goal tonight. Demko, obviously, he'll get the call on opening night, but with the injuries to Besser and Mikheyev and some uncertainty elsewhere in the lineup, you could make a fairly convincing argument, I think, that the opening night lineup is going to look pretty darn close to the group that they're going to roll out tonight.
Which is interesting because, and people, I'm sure, want to talk about the Stars. We'll get to them in a second. I couldn't help but be drawn to the fourth line, which included Nils Åman as the center, with three centers on that line, Lazar to his right, Dickinson to his left. Is that a possibility, do you think?
I think it is. I think it's interesting that Linus Karlsson is still with the group. He's not playing in this one, and I wonder if he gets the opportunity on Friday, where Aman's getting this chance tonight, but... They like what they've seen from Nils Åman right from Penticton through main camp. We've talked about the size is undeniable. In a fourth-line role, if you're going to play center and match up against other centers, he's got the size there. Gets around the ice reasonably well. Still not sure that there's a ton of skill, but in a fourth-line role, you're not expecting him to dazzle and be terribly creative with the puck, but I think that they think his game's pretty refined, having played some professional hockey over in Sweden, and the fact that he has already been tasked with some penalty killing here in the preseason. So, I think it's a great opportunity for him. I think the spotlight's going to be on him, and if he shows well, won't shock me if
No.
he breaks camp as one of the 23-man roster.
The thing that was very evident in Penticton, on top of the size and length, which is undeniable at the top of the penalty kill, is like he was pretty smart. He
Right,
knew where
exactly.
the puck was going. So I think a heady penalty killer who's a load to handle with, someone who's got that sort of length and can get into passing lanes. I do wonder whether that's his ticket to the big club, particularly if Besser. Particularly if Mikheyev can't make it. We know that Besser isn't going to make it. No Mikheyev, no Dermott still, huh? So we continue to just...
I asked Bruce briefly about Dermott, and all he said was he had spoken to him this morning. I didn't see him out at UBC, but Bruce said he had talked to him, and he said he was far brighter-eyed this morning than he was even yesterday, and he took that as a good sign. But I said, Bruce, you're a week out from opening night. Like, are you worried that he's not going to be an option for you? And he said, well, you're always worried with guys that and it's believed to be a head injury at this point. The Canucks haven't come right out and said that, but look no further than Tucker Pullman, whose season was shut down.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Dermott's in that same boat, but you just don't know. But a week out with one preseason game left, I would think it's unlikely that Travis Dermott's going to be available to them to start the season. And then the trickle down from there is we're seeing some things in this game. All the talk about Quinn Hughes as a right side guy.
Yeah.
Well, look, he's back with Luke Shen, and it's like the familiar security blanket there on the left side. But Kyle Burroughs on the left side as well, and no Jack Rathbone in this hockey game. So you look at their six defensemen: Hughes and Shen, Burroughs with Myers, and then OEL and Pullman. And it's been a tough preseason to this point for Tucker Pullman. It has, and I think he's in a battle with guys like Rathbone, with Burroughs.
Yeah.
Christian Wolanin put on a nice show. I still think he's sort of the low man on the totem pole, but he's still with the team here. He's not going to play in this one tonight. Rathbone and Wolanin were the extra defensemen out at UBC this morning, but I think it's really interesting if Pullman doesn't show well and they're putting him in this spot to play with OEL. That if OEL's in the lineup, to me, after Hughes, he's on your second pair. So Tucker Pullman is likely to see some difficult matchups from the Edmonton side of things tonight. Let's see how he acquits himself, because if he doesn't, there's only one preseason game remaining after this one. I think the fact Rathbone's not playing, I think that tells you they feel they've seen pretty much all they need to see from Jack Rathbone. I think he makes this team. Now, he's waiver exempt, and he could be a guy that's not on that opening roster when they set it.
The clear day kind of roster.
But I do think he's going to be in Edmonton next week and part of the traveling party as they head out on the road for a 5-game road trip. But if Pullman doesn't show well, you've got Burroughs who can slide back to the right side, and Kyle Burroughs has had a nice camp, and Bruce has been highly complimentary of his performance to this point. And then you got Rathbone as well. So I don't think it is a stretch to suggest that there's a fair bit at stake for a guy like Tucker Pullman in this game.
Presuming that Rathbone's on the team and presuming that Dermott is out, Hughes, Shen, OEL, Myers, Rathbone, Pullman. Could you see it on opening night?
Yeah, I suppose so.
Yeah. Which is kind of what people thought going into all this, before all the experimentation happened, before Wolanin stepped up, before Dermott got hurt, that maybe it's just coming down to a battle between Rathbone and Dermott to be the third pair left side guy, and you hope that Pullman is healthy enough to play the third pair right side, and that sort of looks like where we're at, unless Kyle Burroughs surprise, unless Dermott gets healthy here.
And then a rotation maybe on that third pairing, depending on what night it is. And because of the Dermott injury, it looks like Wolanin will probably be on that opening night roster. I can't imagine Dermott's ready to go. Do they put any of these guys on IR officially, do you think? Is that a non-starter?
Well, no, I think these are all the questions. You got to account for all of these one-way contracts, and so there is going to be some serious cap manipulation and gymnastics. Maybe a long weekend for most people, and they get a day or two to sort of step away and enjoy turkey. It'll be a long weekend for a different reason for the Canucks front office. I think they've got some really difficult decisions, and then from there, to make it all work and get cap compliant, and they know better than we do about the prognosis on guys like Besser and Mikheyev, and they would know what's going on with Phil DiGiuseppe, who wasn't on the ice this morning.
Yeah.
Justin Dowling is on a one-way contract still that has to be accounted for at some point here. He was back on the ice the other morning skating. That was the first time I had seen him, was the game day the other day. He was
on my list to ask you about, because I haven't heard boo from him, but yes.
Yeah, so he's skating at the very least, but no, he's not a factor in terms of an opening night roster spot, I don't think, at this stage.
Here's a hot take, guys. If Besser's a 7-game guy,
7 days or game?
7-game guy.
Okay, because IR it's 7 days,
Yes.
right? You put a guy on IR, he's going to miss 7 days.
But let's say they've come to,
Minimum.
and remember, he's not shooting right now. Like, it's a hand for a shooter.
Mm-hmm.
If they're pretty sure this is closer to the 7-game mark, is he worth just saying, you know what, let's make sure it's A-OK, LTIR, tons of relief? Is that a possibility?
This is a team that just needs every point available to it out of the gate. And this idea of being cautious for the sake of being cautious, where a goal scorer could be available to you and help you win, one of these tight games that they're in that
But you
stretch.
also want him. You want the real him,
I
right?
hear where you're going with that.
Yeah.
But that seems like, to me, that's an unnecessary risk. And again, they have a much better handle on where he is
On the severity scale, yeah.
and what he will be able to contribute. I do wonder, the final game of the 5-game road trip is in Minnesota. It's the only time they're in Minnesota this season, knowing what that game means to Brock Besser. I wonder if he targets that, but at the same time, sort of to your point, are you rushing a guy to get in for the final game of a 5-game road trip where if you just sat him out for one more,
doesn't have to
days,
travel.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I think I'd be surprised, unless there's been some sort of setback and they know that, I'd be surprised if he started the season on LTIR.
Jason Dickinson does take left side draws, and that might save him here. And, of course, if Besser and Mikheyev are out, that creates a trickle-down effect, which may save him as well. The coach really seems to like Di Giuseppe, but do you think he's going to have that luxury to take and play Di Giuseppe over Dickinson? Is it coming down to those two on the fourth line, assuming that Lazar and Joshua will be stalwarts there?
Look, I know it's been sort of sport in this market to dump on Jason Dickinson, and I certainly have done at times. So credit where it's due. For a guy who couldn't win a faceoff to save his life, he went 4-1 in the circle the other night in Edmonton. I'm not sure he had a 4-1 night in him at any point last season, but it does speak to the Curtis Lazar effect, where he's now just taking faceoffs on his strong side. And so if by bringing in Lazar and you insulate Dickinson and he has a better success rate as a left side faceoff guy, then fine, I'm all for it. So the thing with Jason Dickinson is he's a neutralizer, right? Like, when he's playing well, the other team isn't doing much. Unfortunately, he's not doing a whole lot himself. And I guess the question is, in this day and age, as you try to improve as a team, can you have that kind of player, like a net zero player, in your lineup? And then can you afford to have one that's making $2.65 million this year and next? So I remember at the time of the trade, and we used to hear this a lot from Jim Benning in his regime, that when they acquired players, they believed that there was offensive upside. There was nothing last season that indicated there was offensive upside. And I've seen people suggest a bounce back season. Like, I don't even know what that would look like for Jason Dickinson. What are you bouncing back from? The depths of despair, I suppose.
11 points. Play a regular shift in the NHL would be a bounce back.
I would like him
season.
to see him take the puck off somebody and pass it to his defenseman and get possession. Like, this is where the bar is for me. Do something well.
It's his line, man.
I know.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Hey, the more the merrier.
There's a reason it's a catchphrase. The reason it works.
I thought that line the other night with Lazar and Will Lockwood was the other side. Like, I thought, again, they were so overmatched in Edmonton. I thought that line was okay. But, again, I feel like the bar is being set so low for a guy like Jason Dickinson.
Yeah.
So I really don't know where he slots in. My sense is that they do think he's one of their top 12 forwards right here, right now. But if I'm him, I'm not resting on, I don't know what laurels he'd have to rest on, to be quite honest, but he can't take his spot in the lineup for granted. In fact, remember, Bruce made him a healthy scratch at one point late last season, and I think that was a shot across the bow a little bit. So, he's just kind of come back and been Jason Dickinson at training camp, and here in the preseason, there hasn't been a whole lot to his game, and so if people are expecting you're going to see a totally different type of player this time around because he's comfortable, he's had a year in this market to adapt and everything else, I would say right now it looks like more of the same. So, yeah, I mean, every night out, I'm with you. You'd like to see some things, but at the end of the night, for him, a solid night seems to be a net zero kind of night. And I just don't know if the Canucks can afford to have those types of players in their lineup.
All right, Jeff.
I'd like to see some things. That's all we're asking. That's all we're asking.
Doesn't seem like too much, does it?
One last question here. It's not in your wheelhouse. Bodog Poll Question. And I want to take you back first to July 24th, 2015. You were co-hosting for Blake. We were on the sidewalk. Do you remember?
I do. Absolutely, I do. Because I'm surprised you recovered, quite frankly, from that show.
And we asked the infamous poll, are Canadians who root for the Mariners over the Blue Jays bad Canadians, which I still hear about to this day, 7 days later, on the streets of Vancouver.
7 years later.
Or 7 years later. So go ahead. Have your say. We know who you root for. Answer me the Bodog Poll Question. And anything else you may want to follow
this
up.
Bodog Poll Question,
Yes,
not that
exactly.
one.
Who are
Yes.
you rooting for in the AL Wildcard Series?
Who you
The Mariners or Canada's team, the Toronto Blue Jays?
Yeah, I'm fully on the Mariners bandwagon. Both feet planted on the bandwagon. I look forward to this thing. Yeah, I'd love
You
to
have
see
some company
I'd love
this
to
year.
see it end in 2, but maybe it goes the distance.
Oh, listen to
See what
him.
happens
Oh,
here.
wow.
Does it? Do you bleed Mariner enough that this does feel like you found water in the desert? Like, does this playoff appearance hit you like that?
No.
No.
I'm an armchair,
Yes.
arm's length kind of Mariners fan, but that city.
There's a lot of those.
Sure, and it's been a disastrous franchise for pretty much forever. The parallels between the Mariners and the Canucks are well stated.
Yeah.
But I've been down for those Blue Jay Mariners games. A ton of fun when that park is full, and I know the games aren't being played in Seattle. There is a buzz. They can still draw a crowd, and
For sure.
there is an energy to it. And I just, for that city, I'd like to see the Mariners be relevant. I'd love to see them get back to, I'm not needing 116 wins, so that was fun in its time. But when you look at, they've had some great individual talent. Obviously, they haven't had great teams. But I love this. I just love the subplot here. I love the fact that we're sort of trapped in the middle of it in Vancouver and that there are these warring factions right now. So, it would be disappointing if they go meekly and Mariner fans don't get a home game because, yes, they've made the playoffs, but at the same time, another drought continues unless they get away, find a way through Toronto to have games in their own ballpark. So,
Southern British Columbia is to this series what Red Deer is to the Battle of Alberta. It is contested territory where the line is drawn, the battleground between these two.
the thing I don't
fan
get, and you
bases.
fall right into this, you've got ties to back east, so I'll give you that part of the equation. But it is the general fan base out here of, I can't stand Toronto. I hate Toronto. Oh, but the Blue Jays.
It's true.
You
They
can't
transcend.
have it both ways. You can't. Like, it's either them or it's us. And the us here is down the West Coast.
Our show developer, Rob Gray, tells this to me all the time, and he is an M's fan, but he says, I remember Canada's team before Canada's team, and that was the Rusty Staub Expos going all the way up to Blue Monday. And I think has a little bit to do with that, right? Like, baseball in the 70s and 80s was America's pastime. We weren't calling the NFL America's game at the time.
I
Like,
loved
baseball
as a kid,
was as red, white, and blue as a god.
as a kid, and I still think I'm a kid at heart, but I've got some gray hair now. As a kid, I loved watching the French CBC would air Expos games.
right.
Many of them,
And
Roger Doucette and the crew.
Exactly.
Yep,
and
yep.
then I didn't speak French as a kid, and so you'd watch and you couldn't understand, and then all of a sudden you'd hear Spike Owen, and it was like, hey, that's English. Like, I get that. So, yeah, I mean, some of my earliest childhood memories watching baseball were the Expos, and I just, the Blue Jays, like,
let me
I
correct
watched
myself.
them win the World Series. I get it. I can remember where I was for both of them. I've told the story before. The first World Series, the night they won was my mother's 50th birthday, and my dad had catered this big party at our house and all their friends, and all the guys were in the living room watching baseball, and I don't think my mom was all that thrilled.
No, let me correct Jacques Doucette, not Roger Doucette.
Local sells. That's what we've come to learn, particularly over the last couple of years. I mean, there's a reason you don't see a Raptors radio show in the middle of Vancouver.